video, we'll look at how we can use the pose editor on rigs that are not built with Kangaroo Builder. And we start by going to the website. It's kangaroobuilder.com. And then we go to body and then pose editor standalone. And so these lines you need to copy. And then in Maya, you go to the script editor and in a Python tab, you paste it here. And now before you run this, there's a very important flag. So the default control twist axis. The twist axis is these, this axis here. So on this rig, it's the green one. So it's the Y. If you have an MD rig or an advanced skeleton rig, then I think it would be X. So you would leave it as default. So, but in this way, in this case, we have it as Y. And then I'm gonna run these lines. Now this is not the pose editor yet. So this is like a pre-window. And so in here you click Open Pose Editor. And that's the pose editor. So let's start by adding an interpolator. So we'll select the joint and the control, and then we click on spherical. Now let's rename the interpolator. Okay, we can fix this pose a little bit. It's too much. Okay, so now if I want to sculpt the pose, so if I want to sculpt the up pose, I need to drag it into the target field. And then to sculpt it, so you would click Edit Mesh, but first you have to add it into the meshes. So you know that this is a mesh for the pose editor. And then you just click Edit Mesh. And for sculpting them, we can just move around the vertices directly on the mesh. And you can also use the sculpting tools. Leave it like this. Now, if I want to mirror this to the other side, so we first have to mirror the interpolator. And before mirroring it, check that the name is correct. So it needs to have the L in there, so he knows it's a left one. Okay. And once you have the mirror interpolator, you have to mirror the target. But first you have to set the middle table, the mirror table. Set mirror table. And you click on this. In this case, it's edge flow because it's a very symmetrical model. Yeah, and then you have the E here. And then you click, having the mesh selected, you click mirror from selected target, and then pose combinations and flip meshes. Okay, so now the right side has it too. Now let's look at a few options we have on the interpolators. So in here, I've got the joint parent. If you have an arm, then it's usually better to have the parent as set to the spine and not the clavicle. Now, apart from that, there's not many interesting options on the spherical interpolator. That is because the spherical one is really just interpolating between the poses. And it's actually the same one that the Maya native pose editor is using by default. So it's the same node. If you want to have more options on the timing, then you can convert the interpolator to a cone, for example. So now it's a cone. If you want to know what is a cone, You can check the documentation under interpolators. There's all the interpolators are all explain clearly what they can do and how they work. The cones, they have a few more options you can adjust, but they're not that good in blending in between the poses. So they are basically good in some cases and not so good in other cases. Now let's look at what happens here. So this curve turned red. So these curves here, here's the white one and here's the red one, they show the interpolation. So let's adjust the time here. So if I click on ease in, instead of ease in, I do ease out, and you can see the curve is changing or linear. Um, if the curve is red, that's bad. So that means it's starting not at zero. You go to the beginning, it should be starting at zero, and this is not. So this is because of the settings here. So here the range needs to be smaller or the same as this one, and everything is good. Now let's create another pose. For the elbow, we want to sculpt this shape a little bit. And for this one, we are going to use the signed angle. So we have to select the joint and the attribute of the control. Now let's do that. So we select the joint and then the control, and we just select it here in the channel box. And then we click add and signed angle. Okay. So here we have it. Now let's rename it first. Okay, well, that's a bit too far. Okay. By the way, you can also add more poses. I'm not going to do that now, but you can just with a right click and you can add pose. So if you want to have an extreme one, in this case, we're just going to leave it with just the simple ones. Now let's look at the options here. So here we have the control attribute, which is what we selected. Sometimes on the joint, you might have to adjust those. So this is basically the joint, the angle of the joint you want to measure. The up axis, just make sure it's not the same. So if it's Z, it should be either X or Y. And now next, but in here I can see it works. So if I do double click and you can see it jumps to 100, it's a pretty good chance that all your settings are correct. Now again, let's just drag the, the pose in here and let's sculpt it. Oh yeah, we need to add it first. Okay, so now we can sculpt it. Many times I'm using the smooth vertices from the Kangaroo geometry tools. They are many times much easier to use than the sculpting tools. Okay. Okay, let's leave that for now. It's looking okay. Now mirroring again, we do mirror the interpolator first, and then the mirror table. So this for this one, we cannot use the edge flow because it doesn't have a middle edge. So for this one, we need to make sure it's in the in the default pose, and then we click middle mesh vertex positions. You can see that by the V here, and having it selected, and the interpolator is mirror too. I'm gonna do again mirror from selected target. Okay, so that mirrored it too. Now the signed angle is a very simple interpolator in that it really just measures one axis. So it's only this rotation axis in this case. If you decide halfway that you also want to cover other axes, then you can convert the signed angle into, for example, a cone. Yeah, and then you can see it's a cone and it has all the other options. You can add more poses, but in this case, I'm just gonna undo this. Yeah, because I just want the signed angle on this one. There is one more thing I want to do on the elbow. So you probably know the situation where you are happy with the elbow bend, but then when you rotate the arm up, then you're not so happy anymore. So you get like a few artifacts here. In this case, it's not that bad, but yeah, it is a little bit. We will fix this. So how we fix this is we first create a pose for the twist. And in this case, we could also use the signed angle, but I'm going to use an even simpler one. I'm going to use the custom one. So for this one, I'm going to select the twist axis of the up arm, and then I'm going to do custom. Okay, I'm going to rename it. Okay, so here control axis X, Y, Z. We only need X in this case. Sometimes you have a full translation X, Y, Z, and then you can use the other one. But most of the cases you're just using the first one. The driver attribute is very important. The driver attribute is the one attribute that is actually driving the pose. So in this case, we are going to choose one of the twist joints because the twist joints, when I'm rotating the controller, the twist joint is getting the value. Um, so it's very important that you're gonna put the joint into here because if you don't do that, then it's only gonna work if you're in FK, but it's not gonna work if you are in IK. Okay, so now we have then the on. Okay, so here we have to change the pose. So in this case, it's minus 90. So basically the control going minus 90. We go to default and then click. Okay, so it's rotating to minus 90 and it shows 100 here. So it looks like it's set up correctly. And now we want to use a pose with the up arm twist and the elbow forward. So we just select, having the two poses selected, I'm just going to drag them into the target field. And I've got my own pose, my new pose here. And it's better to rename it. Okay. So now that we have two poses in here, there's another button here where you can specify the way how these get blended. So right now they're being multiplied together. So you're having this curve here, it starts flat and then goes faster. If you do smaller, it sometimes jumps a little bit the UI. Um, yeah, you can see if you have multiply, then the curve is smooth at the beginning, and then because it's just multiplying, so basically the math of how multiplication works. But if you use smaller, then the curve is more linear. Most of the time I use multiply, but if you have if you have a target with many poses, then the multiply can become a problem. Okay, so in this case now, I'm just gonna go to here and I'm gonna fix this. Okay. Now I've got the elbow forward, and then if you are twisting this, you can see here also the percentage increases. It's it's doing the extra pose on top. You can also use the pose editor to add poses to the to controls or transform. So in this case, I've got this control at the back here that I just want to push out when the foot moves back. And I just start by adding an interpolator also. In this case, I'm going to do a cone. That's a little bit too much. And they always swap. So back and forward. Let's swap and back. Okay, that's much better. Now the next thing is also I'm going to drag this into the targets. Okay, so you see the curve is red. That means we need to look at the settings. And okay, so this is starting by 80, but the pose value is minus 45. So the range needs to be plus 45. And now it's looking good. So how do we do that? How do we add that onto this control now? So this is actually pretty easy and quick. Having the control selected and having the target selected, let's rename the target. Let's rename everything first. I forgot to rename it. And then this one. Okay. So having the target selected and having the control selected here, I'm just gonna click and activate shoe back. So this is basically the name of. Okay. And now I have this pose locator. And if I actually go into the pose, then it shows it, the visibility turned on. You can see it now, or you cannot see. Um, that's because pose lock needs to be on. Sometimes you have this on the top group, sometimes not. But if you don't see it, then check for the attribute, and now you can see the pose locator. So as you go in, it turns on and off. And when you are in that pose, you can then just move around the pose locator. And you can also scale it and rotate it. And that's it. Mirroring works similar. So first you have to mirror the interpolator, and then you can mirror the target. You just always have to double check what options you choose here. There's a lot of different options. So in this case, I'm going to do combinations and controls, all controls. Okay, so now I've got the right ankle, and it's also pushing back out because it's also got that pose locator. If you want to export your setup and then import it later again on a new character, then you have to go back to the two script lines to open the first UI. And so it's the export import section, all this here. So you can just specify a folder and and then you click export. And that exported it. And then you can see what you exported in this folder here. So this is basically a file of all the blend shape, and this is a JSON file where you've got all the poses. It's not so convenient to adjust in here. So you can adjust the pose editor data JSON file with the edit button here. And this is basically the JSON editor that we use inside the Kangaroo builder in many places. So you've got here the interpolators, and so you can make adjustment to here. I don't recommend to make too many adjustments here. Uh, it's best to use the pose editor for that, of course. But what you can do with this one is you can share between different characters. So you can select all these are the interpolators. So you can select them and copy or just Control Z and then paste it into another character. But I'm just gonna delete them again. So this is a very good way to share stuff between characters. And then if you change anything, you have to click the save button. And then on importing, you can either use import fast or import slow. Um, import fast will just get rid of the blend shape file of the blend shape node and swap the blend shape node and without assigning any target. The import slow will keep the blend shape node and it will add all the targets to it. So if you're using one or the other one, it really depends if you already have a blend shape node on your character or not. Now, before we end this video, I would like to just remind you to always watch the documentation at kangaroobuilder.com. Videos can get outdated quickly. Documentation is usually not. There's also a few things that I didn't show. For example, on the mirror, I just showed simple left to right flip, but sometimes you might want to adjust if the pose is like closer to the symmetry line, you might want to sculpt the pose having both sides activated and then split. Another thing that is shown in that documentation is how you can update the model. So you have quite a few options. It's a section down here. You just open the pose editor exports file, and then you can warp the meshes, blend shape them, depending if the topology changed or not. And that's about it for this video. If you ever have questions or you get stuck somewhere, you can check the forum here and you'll get an answer pretty quickly there.